to continue our Man United conversation, whoever that texter was. Noorudden Choudrey, good morning.
Hiya, how's it going?
Very good, and welcome back to the show. Been a really uneventful week since we chatted last.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's just a pity United didn't play on the weekend, so we had a long break for the Europa League game. So yeah.
In the just on the basis of last night and coupled with non-events last weekend, in the Ten Hag story, did it feel last night like an important win? Doesn't wipe out what happened on Sunday, but does it nudge things back on track a little bit?
Yeah, I think it does. I think the whole thing about whether the weekend result was a freak result, it depends on both the clubs. So like if it affects your team, then it's not a freak result. If they recover well, then it's just a blip. So yeah, it was. I mean, like when I say blip, I mean like a terrible nightmarish blip that'll haunt us for years. But yeah. It's as long as it's just a one-off, that'll be all right.
For all the good work that's gone on, and like pre last Sunday, obviously there was so much positivity about United. There was a lot of conversation about how many goals are they going to beat Liverpool by. But for all the good work that's been there, is it a fragile progress that's there, and that Sunday sort of planted seeds about, or is there still like a really firm belief that this Ten Hag thing is going to end in the most positive fashion?
I think it's both. I think Ten Hag is obviously an incredible manager, and we can already see that. But I think anytime any team improves radically over a short amount of time, it's great. It's great if that happens, but you've always got to think like it is by nature fragile. So the quicker it happens, the more likely it is that one or two things going wrong could make it sort of crumble a little bit, and I think the worst thing about the Liverpool game was just how fragile like the mentality seemed, just in terms of you go 4-0, you go 5-0, and then like just giving up and just being petulant and bratty and yeah, so that was the most disappointing thing because like you want to see just a little bit of composure and professionalism. So yeah, the game last night, although it wasn't the biggest game in the world, and even though the scoreline looked really good, it wasn't the most amazing performance in the world. Like it was really important just to get that feeling out of your body and just start like looking forward. And again, from United fans' points of view, it's that thing of like just feeling good about your team again. So yeah.
When you mentioned the word petulant there, I think a lot of people would immediately have thought of Bruno Fernandes, Noz, and look, he played well last night, scored his goal, was involved in a lot of the good things that United did, but last weekend, I mean, his attitude is called into question, to say the least. Even last night, Paul Scholes saying he still doesn't believe he's the captain material, that you need someone else with a different kind of personality and character. What do you make of the whole Bruno as captain discussion that's been had this week?
I mean, in one sense, I'd probably agree that like he's a valuable player because the thing is he always impacts games. You see players go missing sometimes. Usually, quite often it's because they're afraid of the pressure and they're afraid of the ball, especially at a team like United. So they won't impact the game like he always does. He always makes things happen. He always impacts the game, and he always pops up with sort of important moments. But first of all, I wouldn't say he's naturally got like a captain's authority or sort of like the kind of way you'd want your team to be represented. But the other thing is like, what do captains matter in football? It's not like other sports like cricket or rugby or whatever, where like it's fundamental and they're sort of like really setting out the tactics on the pitch. Like in football, a captain is just like, it's kind of irrelevant because players are just going to look up to the players that they want to look up to and naturally look up to anyway. And a captain is just the person who sort of like tosses the coin at the beginning. So I don't think I've never understood why people give that much of a like care that much about who's the captain, because it's not important in football.
That's a really interesting point, because we've spent a lot of the week with various people, and I would definitely certainly have been, and I'm challenged now by what you're saying, but I would definitely been of the view that you're looking at Bruno Fernandes as captain in that game and watching his actions with like there was a chat about was he trying to get subbed off or whatever, which was clearly not the case, but his more petulant behaviour or the lack of leadership almost and thinking, well, if that's what he's about, surely then it's okay for me to be sort of giving half an effort here. But your view would be that that's obviously that's on the players if they're taking their lead from him and deciding that they can make a half an effort. I mean, I guess that's on them. But your view is very counter to the traditional view of a captain.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very sport specific. So, like in some sports, like the captain's vital, and I suppose in football, the only sort of practical way in which a captain is important is he's the one who's able to speak to the referee. He's the one that's allowed to harangue the referee, and maybe in that sense, like Ten Hag's been a bit canny because, like, if you want one player to be constantly in the air of the referee and pester him and be able to get away with it, like, it's probably Bruno. So but the thing is, like, this players like Casemiro, who, I mean, the players will respect him just as much if he's captain or not. So yeah, I just think the armband is mostly like unimportant and a bit irrelevant. It's a little bit like I don't really care about, like, as a United fan, I don't really care about the number 7 shirt. I think that's very much like a modern, almost branding thing rather than anything that was real. Because, like, people talk about Brian Robson and stuff, but, like, in those days, everyone was swapping jerseys anyway. Everyone was swapping numbers anyway. So, like, no one had a set number. So yeah, it's one of those things that I don't think is that important. It's just funny, like before when you were talking about John O'Shea and stuff. I was thinking of Bruno, but then I misunderstood. I misheard you actually meant cult hero.
It's a fair point.
You got to get your coffee in early in the morning because that's really important. But it's certain words.
See, the thing, I guess the thing though is I'm thinking is, like, the armband is probably symbolic in many ways. Like, someone like Roy Keane doesn't need an armband to be a leader. Yeah. You know, Steve Bruce probably didn't need an armband to be a leader. But maybe, when I'm thinking about it now, maybe Bruno Fernandes is the type of player who does need the armband to kind of rise to the leadership role a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, the flip side of that is that sometimes, and again, I'm not necessarily saying this is the case with Bruno, but, like, some players sort of go a little bit over the top when they've got, like, extra responsibility. Like, they try a bit too hard. And they try and affect the game too much, and that's when you get like sendings off and, like, stuff like that, where, like, they're almost not playing the natural game.
Yeah, he might have been lucky to have stayed on the pitch, in fact, last night. When you saw the starting 11, were you thinking, masterclass from Ten Hag here? What an absolute genius this guy is. What was your initial reaction when he went with the same team?
Yeah, no, I thought it was good. I thought it was like, yeah, go out and sort out your mess. Like no one's covering up here. And also, like, the thing is, the squad is pretty small in terms of those players that he trusts. So it would have been a bit weird if he'd made like 2 or 3 changes after 7-0. It would have been a little bit weird because it would almost be perceived as those players that he took out are to blame for the 7-0. So I think it was quite canny in that respect, in that, like, if he doesn't drop anyone, then everyone's to blame. Whereas if like, for instance, he dropped Bruno and Anthony and various other people, then, like, suddenly everyone will be saying, oh, he thinks that they're the problem. He thinks that they're the reason why they're 7-0. So yeah, I think it made sense. And like I said, it was a good performance. I do think the sort of score in the end was a bit flattering, but yeah, like, Anthony scored his normal goal that he always scores, which and again, like, he's such a funny one, like, in terms of, like, the amount of United players who'll be, like, moaning and flagging him off, but then he'll score his goal. It's just goal. And like his same goal that he always scores.
You mentioned about, like, I totally agree with that point about if he makes changes, people are pointing the finger at that. That said, at half time last night, or when the second half got underway, I was like, Delot is the guy that this is the one. This is the guy who he's blaming for this stuff. It seems like a long road back for him now, or is that overstating it?
I think the thing with Delot is that, like, beginning of the season, he was really, really good in terms of, I've never massively rated him just because I think he's a bit of I've always perceived him as a bit of a nothing player, and he just kind of does a job, but like, that's it. Like, he's like a 6 or 7 out of 10. Like, you don't notice him, which isn't a good thing for a fullback, like, especially in the modern game. But he started the season really, really well, to the extent that, like, he was linked to like Barcelona and Real Madrid and teams like that. But he's totally gone back to type really after the World Cup. And I mean, in fairness, Wan Bissaka was a bit of a game changer for me. I think he's been a bit of a revelation since, because everyone just assumed that like he's off, and he might still be off, but it's that thing of like he added a bit of oomph and dynamism to the team last night, and he's done it in a few games before where he just adds an energy and he just impacts the game. And the thing with Wan Bissaka is that I think his ability to go forward is a little bit over a big thing's made out about the fact that he can't go forward, or he can't sort of add anything to the team going forward, which I think that's a bit overstated. My biggest issue with Wan Bissaka is everyone goes on about he's a great defender. He's a great one-on-one defender, but like his positioning is sometimes his cack. Like he'll the amount of times a cross will come in from the other side and he's just not defending. He's not marking his man on his post. So I think that's the issue with Wan Bissaka. But like last night, I think he was amazing. He might have been like the biggest difference in the second half.
Wout Weghorst came up when we were talking about cult heroes earlier on. I'll be very careful when I use that word. He the emotion from Weghorst when he scored the goal. Clearly, it meant so much to him. You can't help but feel like it's definitely a short-term solution to a long-term problem for United. Who do you hope to see brought in, Noz, as that proper striker, as that number 9, like Harry Kane and Victor Osimhen from Napoli, probably being the two that are most heavily linked, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, so much of it depends on sort of like the funds that are available, and also like I don't quite get the whole financial fair play situation now, because that seems to have a major impact on who can spend what. But I everything I've seen of Osimhen, I love. I just think he's a great player. Like it's funny, you talk about cult heroes, and one player that I always loved at United, and he never quite happened for him properly because of injury, was Louis Saha. I just thought he was an incredible player, like so underrated. If he'd have stayed injury free, like in a lot of ways, he was not only was he the complete centre forward, but like the complete modern centre forward. Like he was almost ahead of his time. I honestly think he's that good that. And again, I'm not saying he's as good as these two players, but he was almost a combination of Dwight Yorke and Andy Cole in that he had the incredibly sharp finishing, but he had all the build-up play as well. He could dribble the ball, he could get involved in other parts of the game, and like Osimhen just seems like a next level Louis Saha in terms of he's that kind of player. But even more so. And again, like you've always got to be slightly careful of players who are having like a massive purple patch, because you don't know if they're just having like an amazing season or whatever. But the thing with Osimhen is that like his overall game is so good, and you can immediately see if he was in a Ten Hag team how he would have the time of his life, and be given full reign to do what he wants to do. And again, like it's that thing of like Harry Kane's incredible footballer, and he'd be probably more of a dead sort of like guarantee of getting goals and doing well in especially in the league in English football. But like Osimhen is like the player who there's a bit more fantasy about him. There's a bit more excitement about him, that he could be like a player that goes on to the next level at the club. And yeah, the thought of an informed Rashford and Osimhen together. Like no one would want to play against that in any league, like whether it's Champions League or the Premier League. No one would want to face them two together.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Obviously, the younger player and Harry Kane is just like part of his reason possibly for going to United is that he's just not happy with his current partner. It's just not, it's you, not me. And I've been given the side eye from this other club over here, and it may end up, of course, being that way. What, by the way, just when we touch on the cult hero, how would you describe the factors that go into describing what a cult hero should be?
I mean, I don't think it's an exact science, but I think it's generally when a player means more to you as a fan of the club than it would naturally mean to the rest of football. And also it's a funny one because I suppose it's a ratio of how good the player is with how much you love them for other reasons. So I don't know, like Diego Forlan, like he was a level player who wasn't quite good enough for United, or he didn't quite work at United when he was there. He ended up being an incredible player at other teams, but the amount of hard work he put in, the amount of sort of like effort he put in, the way that the fans were rooting for him. And I think it's funny you mentioned Weghorst. Like, people are happy for him, like a great moment last night, but I don't think the fans have taken him to the hearts as much as Forlan. And I think part of that can be vulnerability. Like, I don't think Weghorst has got a natural sort of like aura of vulnerability. Like, he looks like a Hollywood like bully in a film. Whereas like Forlan, you could see that he's really struggling. He needs the fans to be on his back, not on his back in a bad way, but like in support of him. And when he scored, it was such a massive thing. And again, like, a cult hero needs a big game, and like Forlan scoring twice against Liverpool like cemented that. And again, like, there's other like there's players that, so outside of teams he's played for, like, how much do people rate Joe Jordan? And yet, like, he's way before my time, but I know he's a cult hero. Like Les Sealer, like, he was my era. Like, outside of United fans, like, if you talk to Spurs fans or West Ham, well, West Ham's a bad example because he played for them, but like Portsmouth or whatever, like, they'd be like, okay, Les Sealy played for Luton and he played for Manchester United and played for other teams, but yeah, okay, whatever. But like for Manchester United fans, he is such a cult hero because he had these big moments. He had these big cup finals. He had that famous cup final when he refused to come off the pitch, but when he had his leg bandaged and he was basically playing with 1.5 legs. So it's that kind of thing that sort of makes you a cult hero. And I think John O'Shea's a funny one because if you take John O'Shea and you take Darren Fletcher, both similar in a way. In that they were utility players who were really useful for the team and always did a job. But like Darren Fletcher, like, there wasn't really anything to hang your coat on in terms of his personality or like anything to really massively love. Whereas I don't know what it is, but with John O'Shea, there is something that is they just fundamentally look like he's lovable, and I don't know why. And
the late goal against Liverpool would help.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But again, it's that thing of like it's a trier. Like, people love a trier. People love someone who really cares.
Yeah.
And John O'Shea, like, again, like, he's. Sometimes it's just your face. Like, he's like John O'Shea just got a kindly face. He's a big hulk of a man, but like. He's got a kindly face. Like, sometimes it can be as arbitrary as that. But yeah, like, it's also, things can happen in retrospect as well, because like, you talk about Anthony, and then like these days everyone's comparing him to like Nani, saying the thing with Nani is that like if Anthony was half as good as Nani, then like we'd be happy. Like, why can't he be more like Nani? Like, but like, you go back to that time, he did everyone's head in. Like, everyone would always be slagging him off. Everyone would be saying how frustrating he was. But like, in retrospect, now people love him. The same people who were slagging him off. So yeah, I think with Anthony, like, he needs to sort of like prove. Anthony either needs to show more of his game in terms of like, there's been one or two moments where he's shown like with the quick passing and one twos and like breaking through. Like, he's more of a player than just that shot. So he either needs to expand his repertoire and show he's more of a player, or he just needs to become really, really good at that one thing. And like Arjen Robben, like he was really good at that one thing, but that one thing was so good. It's like Christopher Walken or like Jennifer Coolidge. Like, they, in everything that they act in, they are playing themselves, but they do it so well that it's fine. Whereas like Jason, you don't want Anthony to become like Jason Statham, who essentially does play himself, in every film, but is that a good thing? So
he gets typecast. On that note, and for the weekend that's in it, we have had a comment in here from Bobby Dwyer, who's a noted Spurs fan who is in contact with the show on a fairly regular basis, saying in the tone of Will Smith, keep Harry Kane's name out your mouth. That's the word from there. Inshallah United, we mentioned it last week and you were on with us. It's out now.
Yeah, well, it's officially out next month, 16th March. So get your pre-orders in. Like the one thing I'll say is that like, do you know like there's the whole thing of like what people do where like they're like, I can't be racist because like I've got a black best friend or I've got an Asian best friend. What I'm saying here now is I'm allowing you to have my book on your bookshelf. So anytime anyone says you're racist or Islamophobic, just point to the book. Like I'm letting you have that as a get out of jail card.
You've just increased orders like through the roof with that. What's it about?
It's essentially about me growing up in the late 80s and late 80s and the whole of 90s really. Just as the son of an immigrant Pakistani family, and just finding my way and sort of like finding my passions growing up, and that was like music, it was like culture, it was, and obviously a big thing was football, and it's about how I sort of like ended up supporting United, how important they were to me growing up, how as like a little brown kid, as a Muslim kid, like you I think everyone like when you're going through your teenage years, you desperately want acceptance and you desperately want to belong to something. And obviously we all know that football is amazing for that. You can go anywhere in the world, and if you're wearing a football kit or you mention a footballer, or even if you mention you're from Manchester, straight away, like it's a conversation. People sort of like can latch onto that, and it's just about how growing up, like that meant so much to me, and how like people look at people. I think people think about being Muslim or being Asian or being whatever, and football is separate things. I don't. Like for me, it was all connected. And it's also about like the funny thing is that it's almost like an accident of birth that I was born in Manchester and had all these passions and got into Manchester music and Manchester culture and obviously United. Like my family could easily have moved to Liverpool or somewhere in London, and then I'd have all sorts of different sort of cultural influences. So yeah, it's a bit of all that, and hopefully it's fun and sort of like humorous as well as sort of like touching on those more serious points.
And I think your take on Maggie Thatcher and Oz might strike a familiar chord with some Irish readers as well, possibly.
I mean, she was a massive cult.
Excellent note to leave it on. Plus everything you've said there has kicked off a million questions in my head previously, so rather than squeeze that into 30 seconds now, let's get a copy of the book and let's get you back on over the next few weeks and have a chat about it.
Brilliant.
Thanks a million, Naz.
Alright, see you later.
Cheers, Naz. As at Bearded Genius on Twitter if you want to go and check him out, and he is absolutely well worth a follow, and that will be a book that I'll be reading. I did enjoy his explanation of why you should get it on your shelf, and for that reason alone I'm sure it'll sell well.